Think about the last argument that you had. Just take a minute right now to kind of scroll back in your memory and think about the person, the place, the event, the experience. Think about what you said. Think about what you did. Now, consider, what would it be like if someone that you wanted to impress was there observing that argument? Maybe a neighbor, maybe a coworker or your boss. Just imagine that everybody knew that you acted and spoke in that way. There's so many of us that end up acting like we don't want to act when we're behind closed doors with people that we're more familiar with. And for me personally, those people in my life have been with my mother, my little sister, and my husband now of 24 years. And what happens when we are in those types of cycles with people that we're close to, those types of experiences really steal our joy. In fact, we end up thinking the way we're acting in those angry moments, in those shameful moments, we end up thinking that that's our true self, that that is our true identity. And we may even hear a person close to us say something like, well, they don't really know the real you, that, your true colors are now coming out. And those kinds of statements can be so cutting, can really, just cut straight to the core and really wound us. My name is Monica Maurer. I am a licensed therapist and I'm the director of the Center for Transformation. I really believe that our true identity, our true self, is not rooted in those angry and intense moments, but rooted in the true self, that the person that we really want to be, that we aren't always able to act like. In fact, what will happen commonly is that I may act more out of my angry, wounded self than I act out of my true identity. And then others around me, as well as my own self, starts to believe that that is truly who I am. And I begin to play out a false identity, a false narrative, a false sense of self. And I'm never able to actually live out my truest identity. So in order to fully understand that, it's important to understand the technical definition of joy. Joy isn't, I believe we all know, joy isn't happiness necessarily. Joy is a sense that others are glad to be with me and I'm glad to be with them. Because relationships are the most important part of life, of who we are as humans, we experience joy when we're together with others. The research from the 90s, the Decade on the Brain, when Alan Shore did that preliminary research on the live brain, they studied and found that there are 6 negative emotions and one positive emotion that we feel as humans, and the positive emotion is joy. And all the other emotions, anger, sadness, fear, shame, hopeless despair, and disgust, those 6 negative emotions are the joy stealers. Those are the things that rob us from feeling and experiencing joy on a regular basis. And unfortunately, what happens is we get into issues, disagreements, arguments, painful rejections and hurts in relationships, and our joy is stolen from us. We don't have the joy that we once did or that is actually possible. Our brain's response to enjoying each other and being enjoyed by one another is joy. And what will happen if one of those emotions, those negative emotions, creeps in, which they're always going to, they come up so quickly, like a 1/6 of a second response to any stimulus, like getting cut off in traffic or burning dinner or whatever. Our relational brain goes off when those emotions come up. And our brain wants to go back to joy quickly. I mean, our brain is designed and wired to get back to joy quickly, and depending on how well we did that as a child will determine how well we're able to do it as an adult. So joy is a crucial part of us living in a life of satisfaction. But these negative emotions will pop up. And depending on how quickly we can get back to joy, which, by the way, the healthiest brain can return to joy in 90 seconds or less, which is very, very difficult, yet possible. So something for us to try to attain to. But all other emotions, there's more complex emotions than those 6 negative ones I mentioned a little bit earlier. But all negative emotions are just combos of those big 6 negative emotions. Those end up stealing our joy, taking us down a road we never intended to go. In fact, we see that all major mental illness and addiction is rooted in combos of these big 6 negative emotions and an inability to return to joy from them. So when we go into our argument cycles with our significant other or family members or friends, when we have periods of disappointments or things that aren't quite going our way, or losses in our lives, these things can really set us back from living out a truly joyful identity. And that's a travesty, because there's so much good in the world and in so much that we can experience that's good. Even in suffering, we can be joyful. What oftentimes happens in our argument cycles is that we get into an enemy state of mind. And when we're in that enemy state of mind, we're thinking, how can I protect myself? And what do I need to do to get this other person to stop attacking me, or where I'm not in danger from the other person? So I go into this coping mechanism, this coping mode of being in an enemy state of mind. And when those dynamics come up with my significant other or others in my life who I've had an argument cycle with, my true joyful self is no longer seen. I become more of a bully or an enemy to that person. In marriage therapy, we call it negative sentiment override in the relationship versus positive sentiment override in the relationship. We want to be in positive sentiment override with our family members, our friends, our spouse, our children, but oftentimes we get into a negative enemy state of mind, and they begin to think that's just who that person is. They're just vindictive, they're mean, they're cruel. The scowl on their face, their eyes squinting and glaring at me, that's just who they are. But I'm here to tell you today, that's not just who anyone is. None of us is an enemy state of mind as a true identity. It's what we end up doing in order to protect ourselves, in order to cope with the difficulty of life. So our goal is to keep the relational part of the brain on all the time, 24/7. Well, we're sleeping some of that time, but we need to do whatever we can to keep that part of our brain on the majority of the time, most of the time, if not all the time, so that we can actually be the person who we truly are, rather than the person who our wounded self is causing us to act like. So there are 3 things that will turn off your relational brain. There are 3 things that will turn that part of you off and put you into an isolated or enemy state of mind. And that will impact the way that you view yourself and the way others view you. In fact, when I think back to my marriage, I've always been quite an assertive person, and had enough dating relationships prior to marriage that I knew that if I married someone passive, it would not be good for them and it would not be good for me. And I told my husband, I remember when we were engaged, saying something to him like, listen, if you let me control you, I will not like you, and I won't like myself, and you won't like me either, and we'll be in a bad place. And so he's not quite as assertive as I am, but throughout our marriage, he has had to attempt being more assertive so that he can grow the skills that he needs in order for us to have a healthy, balanced marriage. In fact, the most Satisfying marriages are those with two highly assertive people, because as you can see, if it's a passive and an assertive person, you'll be in a cycle like I just described. If it's two aggressive people, then you're beating each other up all the time and in an enemy state of mind all the time. If it's two passive people, you never talk about anything. And we'll see those couples in marriage therapy, and it's very difficult because they've had gridlocked issues for years and years and years that they've never dealt with at all and are scared to even talk about. And then you get the two assertive people. That's where there's difficult conversations. I call them toe-to-toe conversations, where we are going back and forth, speaking to each other about the things that we really need to talk about. And it's powerful because there's change that can happen in those assertive conversations. So the three things that you need to try to eliminate from your life in order to keep your relational brain on and keep away the enemy state of mind are these three things. You have to be careful in regard to not having any self-care, lack of self-care, fatigue, hunger, being sedentary, those kinds of things. You need to be exercising, eating right, sleeping. Then being careful about stress and worry in your life, getting enough rest so that you can deal with the stress and the worry that comes your way. And then being judgmental or critical of others, that really impacts your ability to stay in a relational state of mind. And when you're thinking negative thoughts about others, it's just really toxic and really damaging to the way that you think and feel, and it goes directly into you behaving and speaking in a way that's damaging to yourself and others. Then the three things that will actually help you turn the relational brain back on are these three things: getting enough rest, having fun, and getting some accurate identity reflection from the people in your life. We all need rest. Our bodies have limits. We cannot exist in this world without getting enough rest. I hear people saying, oh, well, I don't need as much sleep as the other person. I've learned to live without it. It's just not a good thing. We need to get a decent amount of sleep. We need to get to bed, use the circadian rhythms to really get to bed at a good time and wake up with the sun. This is the way our bodies function best. And then to have fun. Laughter is medicine. When you laugh and have fun and let go, your parasympathetic nervous system is engaged and you're able to just relax and enjoy and stay in that relational state of mind. And then you need to surround yourself with people who are speaking accurate and true identity to you. When you have people in your life who see you through the eyes of heaven, people who see you through the lens of your true identity, even when you're not acting like it, it can help you keep that relational brain on. And if they can't do it for yourself. Love yourself enough to see yourself through the lens of your true self, the true attributes of who you want to be, not the person that you act like all the time, but the person that you want to be. In the past, as a teen and a young adult, I would wake up every day stuck in a sense of shame. I wasn't doing anything horrible, but for some reason I was living in a state of shame. My brain was not bouncing out of that sense of shame. I don't know if it was transgenerational or just what, but somehow my brain was stuck in that state of mind. I have had to do a lot of work over a long period of time to find myself living in joy so that I'm waking up every day with a thankful heart. In fact, appreciation is the birthplace of joy. When we appreciate, have gratitude and thankfulness, we will have joy. It will come from that. So learning to relate to others, see myself through the lens of my true identity, relate to others in healthy and satisfying ways, keeps me from living in that state of shame and stealing back my right to live in joy, stealing back my true identity so that I can live, enjoy, expand my capacity for joy, gain more joy strength, and just kind of exist in a joyful state of mind, even when there's suffering. You're worth it. I'm worth it. Your loved ones are worth it. We're all worth experiencing joy and getting back the joy that's been stolen.